Hi there. Welcome back to Tuesday's Tips. I'm Greg Kaiser, and in this weekly feature, I try to pick a topic in Lightroom or something dealing with maybe image editing, and I might branch out later on, but I try to pick a topic that I can deal with in just a few minutes to keep it kind of small tidbits of information for you, and hopefully it's something that will help you in your photography and specifically image editing today. What we're going to be looking at is one of the first things that you deal with in an edit. It's a global edit, which means that it affects the entire image, and it's dealing with colors. I've talked a lot about colors so far in this series. This is one of the most basic starts to color, and it's dealing with white balance. This is something that a lot of people will set on their camera as auto and leave it at that. I don't recommend that you do that. I recommend that you set the white balance to the existing conditions. If it's sunny, set it to sunny. If it's cloudy, set it to cloudy. If you're shooting something in shade under a blue sky, set it to shade. I know that shooting raw, all of this is kind of immaterial, and you have the opportunity to change it in post. But if you are trying to get the most accurate histogram in the field, the best thing to do is to set the white balance accurately, knowing that you will fine-tune it in post later. And I'm going to show you why as we get into this. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get us into Lightroom. And let's see. Okay, we should be looking at the Lightroom screen at this point. We're going to start off with this kind of standard picture of a barn. One of the topics, or one of the subjects I do like to shoot from time to time. Now this is straight out of camera, as I do like to show during these tutorials. I like to show just the straight raw capture. I have obviously exposed to the right, which means that the histogram is pushed all the way over to the right, without clipping anything. And the reason that I do that is because I do want to retain as much shadow detail as I can within the image. I don't want to lose detail in the highlights, but I know that there is plenty of detail there according to the histogram. And this is very similar to what I see on the back of the camera in live view and also in image review on that histogram. But something that you need to keep in mind is those histograms, the images that you're seeing on the camera, are based on JPEG representations of that raw file. Even if you are not saving a JPEG, that's where that's coming from. So if we look at the histogram up here, this is representative of how I shot it and what I shot. If we come down to the basic panel here, we have like the second block here underneath the color profiles, which we've talked about in the past. We've got the white balance, which is based in temperature and tint. And the temperature is cooler tones versus warmer tones, blue versus the yellows. Tint is the maroons, or I'm sorry, the magentas compared to the greens. So we can fine tune this, but when you set the white balance in the camera, this is how it comes out. And as you see here, this is as shot. This is the white balance that I set the camera at the time to give me that most accurate histogram. Now, had I gone in and left it at auto, watch the histogram up at the top right. You see how the actual histogram does change? It's small, but it does change a little bit. As I come down here and go to, say, a daylight white balance, you see how it's pushing the blues way up here, a lot closer clipping than any of the other channels. That's one of the things that I want to avoid, because that may be robbing me of a third of a stop when I'm exposing to the right. If we go to cloudy, which it would be about what this was, the histogram looks pretty good, got plenty of room over here. If we go to shade, it changes again subtly, but it puts a lot of yellow in this picture. So if we go back to as shot, that's what I shot at the time, and that's what I start with to edit. Now, when it comes to setting your white balance in post, you hopefully are not going to need to make a lot of change here. This is usually one of those very small things unless you're going for a certain mood. One of the easiest ways to do this, and especially if you have a hard time with color, this little medicine dropper here, this is your color picker or targeted adjustment tool. Left click on that, and now all of a sudden your cursor has picked this up, and you can find something in the scene that is a neutral tone. Now obviously the sky does have blue in it with the clouds, and that is a realistic representation. The clouds did have a blue tint that day, but let's just say I wanted to neutralize that and make the clouds a neutral tone. I can left click anywhere in here, and you see that grid. You can kind of see how the pixels work out, so you can pick an exact tone that you want. Here it's all pretty uniform. So there, it has countered that blue cast to the sky and has really neutralized it. And what we've done, we have warmed this temperature slider well up here, because it was, I think, 5,900 or something. It's now 7,200. The tint, I think, was at +2. We're now at 15. This is too warm for me. So we can go click that again. We can find another place on here, and it's going to tweak it even more. That was a deeper blue area, so that gave me more warmth. Again, not what I want. So we'll double click here, and yeah, 59 and +2 were the values that we started with here. So there is not a gray on here or something that I want to be neutral. So the medicine dropper is not going to work all that well for me here. So what I would like to do is look at the picture, and for me, the first thing I notice is there is too much green in this. And I don't mean the green here and the green here. The sky has kind of a greenish tint. The wood has kind of a greenish tint. Everything that's green is very green. So I want to add a little of the opposite, which is the magenta. And as we bring this up here, and not much, but you see at about +11 from +2, it kind of neutralizes that green tint. Now we can start looking at the photo, and we can decide how we want to go as far as a temperature goes. I don't mean hot or cold. I mean, do we want to make this a warmer look, like the sun is really low in the sky? That doesn't look right. Do we want to make it go cooler? I kind of like the cooler look, but that's too cool. And the thing that you want to remember with white balance, this is one of the quickest and easiest ways to set a mood in a picture. The warmer you go, the happier it appears. This is not a happy picture. We've got a cloudy sky, not a lot of direct light, not a lot of saturation going on. So I want to bring that down just a little. And let's just say right about there looks good to me. We've still retained that blue in the sky. We've reduced the warmth down here in the grass. With the extra magenta dialed in, the green is not so much in your face. This is just with those two sliders. Okay, we've set a mood, we've neutralized color casts. This makes for a good starting point with your image. And at the end of the edit, and again, there's a whole lot that went into the edit with this, this is where I ended up. And I actually warmed this back up to about 56, 84, and I dropped the tint down. And as you play with the colors, you will need to fine-tune this. But the idea is you want a good starting point so that the colors look right to you when you begin. And if we go back to the raw and we reset everything, that is just not the colors that I want to see in this picture. So everything is incremental. You don't do any complete change with just one slider. It's all a culmination of multiple sliders. So you do small adjustments with each thing that you do. And you can go from here to here. So let's look at another option or another example. And this is going to be a waterfall, obviously. Again, straight out of camera. This is how I shot it. And if we go up here, we can go down, and it was a cloudy day. So if we do cloudy, that's going to change things just a little bit. The colors still are not right for me. There's too much green. You see down here in the shadows on the dark rocks, it's still too green. The green is overbearing. So we're going to go back 5900 and plus 2 is what the camera recorded at the time. And because I'm in RAW, I have the ability to adjust the white balance all the way, either direction, and make whatever changes that I deem this picture needs. Now, again, the simplest way to do it, although I don't do it this way, I prefer to go by my eyes, but we can hit the medicine dropper here and we can find something that's neutral. And we don't want to do the green leaves. That's not neutral. We want to keep those green. But if we do that, see, it neutrals the green by adding a whole lot of magenta, a whole lot of purple. But now we've really messed up the colors. So we can go back, we can get this, and come back around. And somewhere in the water here is generally white. It's generally a neutral tone. So we can click there. Now we're starting to get somewhere. That looks pretty good. To me, it's still got a little too much green in it, and the colors are not quite right. So I want to come up here. Let's just start with where the camera went. And I'm going to look, and again, too much green for me. So I'm going to take this green and magenta, the tint slider, and I'm going to change how this looks. And my idea here is I do want to neutralize the water, make that white. So that works for me there. Now I'm looking around, it's still very green, and I know if I add warmth to this, what's going to happen is the green is going to amplify. Let's look at this. If I bring the slider to the right, which adds warmth, you see how everything starts to kind of take on that same look. It just doesn't look like the mood that I was after. You may like this, and that's the value of adjusting the white balance. You can suit this to taste. For me, I think I want to go a little bit cooler. And again, not much. Somewhere around there, 5860 plus 47. That would be, for me, a good starting point on this image. Now, what we ended up with is right here, and I cooled it down even more to 5333, and I brought the tint back into the green just a little bit at plus 32. So we end up getting a nice division of the tones. We've got the yellows and oranges here in these leaves that have fallen. The greens still look good to me. The water is still relatively neutral. It does have a little bit of color to it, but that was by design. That helps build the mood. So I've got all this mood and atmosphere in this image that I wanted, and I started with that and went there. So the white balance was a big part of this edit. Again, everything works in incremental fashion. So every slider that I've done, and as you can see, I've changed exposure, I've actually dropped contrast, dropped the highlights, raised the shadows, I've dropped the whites, dropped the blacks a little bit, added a little texture, vibrant saturation have been changed, and then each one of these other modules down here I've also adjusted. So an edit is the culmination of all the parts. One slider or even two sliders is not going to get you where you want to be. So keep that in mind when you're doing your edits. Do things gradually, do things slow. Tackle one problem at a time. That's what you have to do. So we're going to go to this right here, which one of my favorite subjects, old rusty cars. This one was shot under a cloudy day. There's still some blue in the sky, but the sun was behind clouds at the time. You can see a little bit of the sunlight hitting the front grille, which is what I liked about this. I did have some nice contrast between the warm light here and the cool shadows, and I wanted to capitalize on that. Again, if we go up here, we look at the different things. If I had done this as daylight, you see, it makes things a little bit bluer. The histogram changes. If I did this as shade, which would counter the deep shade here on the side, histogram changes again. This becomes very, very warm. It becomes unnatural looking. So I don't want to do any of those things. And with this, there are a couple of different things that I can do as a neutral tone. Again, this is not what I did doing my edit. I did it by eye, but we can come up here. First thing that I see is here, that's gray. It's on the shaded side, so it might not give us an accurate color. Yeah, see, that got us a little too warm. This may work for your vision and what you want. It's all in what you like for your edits. If I pick something that should be neutral up here on the front of the car where the sun's hitting, okay, I lost my warm glow of the sun here. I've got good shadow here, but I need something kind of in the middle. And what I can do, I've gotten close here. I can start fine-tuning and making it where I want everything to be. And let's see, by warming it just a little bit, I've retained my warmth on the front. I still have the cool shadow here on the side. And I look, as far as tint goes, I think it looks okay. I might want just a tad more green. Yeah, something like that. So with two different sliders, we've made an adjustment, and if we come back to as shot compared to 5860 and +8, we've cooled it a little bit and we've added a little bit of magenta. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. With the medicine dropper that gets you close, or you can go straight in with the sliders. Here I see too much green, so I'm going to add a little bit of magenta to where it looks good, and about right there looks good, +8. And then I can come in here, work with the sliders. That's losing that warmth on the front, getting it back. Somewhere right around in there. Looks good. So we can do it by eye, we can do it by the dropper here, we can go in and we can select one of these over here, should we want. So there's a lot of different ways that we can work white balance. But again, the main thing is just remember that an edit is based on all of the different sliders that you've done. In this situation, I've dealt with the color specifically in certain areas. If we go up to masks, these are the masks that I've done. We'll get into the masks later on at another time, but just remember that all of these different modules over here play a part in your edit. Don't try to accomplish everything with just one. So thank you for joining me for this Tuesday's tips. I hope you found it informative. If you have, don't forget to like, subscribe, add a comment. Let me know what I can do to make these tutorials better. If there's any topic that you specifically would like to see, I would love to cover those topics that are definitely applicable to my audience. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you again here next week.